All right. Well, I know. I already did an episode about the vengeance factor. Why am I doing something specific to Acamarians? I was thinking about this again, and something that I vaguely alluded to when I was doing the episode about the vengeance factor is the idea that this episode is portraying cultures in a way that is profoundly unrealistic and functionally backwards compared to how most civilizations and cultures work in real life. How so? Well, as I mentioned before, one of the key plot points of the Vengeance Factor is that the Acamarians had started to expand into the galaxy and had territorial holdings that were beyond their homeworld. The bizarre part is that one of the key plot points in the end of the episode reverses that and has it so that the clans living off world were going to go back to the homeworld that they had left because it was overcrowded. Yeah. Uh, okay. The only semi-logical explanation for that is that the clans, of which Chorgan was the primary leader figure, had not been able to establish a stable base of operations in their holdings outside the um, Acamarian homeworld. So they didn't really have the ability to just live on their own in peace and not bother other people, and thus resorted to pirating Federation territory in order to get supplies that they needed to live off of. That is something that is actually kind of sort of semi reasonable, except it's only semi reasonable because of the fact that it ignores one key fundamental fact practical consideration. The homeworld's just as overpopulated as it was before. The places these guys used to live before they left the homeworld are now occupied by someone else. So they can't just go back home and chill the same place they used to live. Someone else would get um, dispossessed in order to shoehorn them in. And if you look at the Star Trek Online take on this, which is, decades later, it didn't really work out because of the fact that the actual underlying cause of the reason why Chorgan and those other guys left the homeworld was never resolved. Also, one thing that I personally looked at with this is that it sets up the Acamarian ruling council as totalitarian autocrats because of the fact that Chorgan and his group were the only ones not bowing to their will. Which, yeah. See, Star Trek setting likes to have alien cultures be monocultures. And it presented Acamarians as a broken culture because they weren't a monoculture and fixed that brokenness by making them into a monoculture, or trying to, anyways. Which is one of those aspects of world design with the Acamarians that even the first time I watched this episode as a teenager, I was like, huh? That's their solution? Didn't make sense at all. Even to a teenager who didn't really get Star Trek at the time. It just fundamentally did not make sense. Like, I get the whole idea of, have telling them to stop pillaging and raiding stuff. Yeah, because they actually did kill people raiding those Federation outposts. That was genuinely a crime that they needed to be, you know, told to stop doing that. However, by the same token, having the gatherers abandon their off-world holdings completely, that doesn't make sense. I mean, having, trade relations so that the gatherers are doing stuff so that they're not, you know, isolated and forced to resort to piracy to survive. Sure, okay, whatever. Forcing them to relocate to the home world where they're going to be in the middle of the same clan feuds they left the homeworld to escape just feels backwards. Because, as I mentioned before, it's a unique case of a civilization that had, well, okay, the clan structure of the Acamarians actually makes it questionable as to whether or not they actually count as a single civilization. The gatherers were a different political entity than the Acamarian ruling council. And as mentioned earlier, the ending of the episode changed that and made them all fall under the ruling council. Thing is, why are they having the Acamarians abandon all of their um, territory outside the home system? That's the part of the episode that really, really rubbed me the wrong way. And again, as someone who's doing this from a TTRPG's perspective, yeah, having players do this in a TTRPG, players would quite reasonably be like, yes, we'd rather do this other thing because it makes sense by real world perspectives. It's like those planets that the gatherers were living on. Nobody else wanted them. Oh boy. Anyways, though, another aspect of this is that there are certain questions about the clan feuds that didn't actually get properly answered. Because what made this episode so interesting, so compelling, was they actually delved into the history of the Acamarian clan feuds. Like, why were the Lornak and the Trelestra having a fight to the death? And most of the two clans ended up dead as a result of it because of it was just that freaking bloody. Um, one member of the Trelesta clan, Utah, was a individual who survived the presumed extinction of the rest of the clan. Like Utah was, as far as anyone knows, the only member of the Trelesta clan left. The Lornak clan was also greatly reduced in numbers, and Utah had taken to going around and trying to kill off all of the members of the Lornak clan, which she did by infecting them with a virus that would, well, it's only deadly to Acamarians who are descendants of the Lornak clan, it kills those. So she would go around acting as the carrier of this deadly virus and just, kill everyone. Now, one thing that's notable about this is that while Chorgan had a functional, warp-capable ship that admittedly was undergunned compared to the Enterprise and just not a serious threat, it was a legit starship. Notably, Marouk called the Enterprise as a taxi in order to get uh, a trip to go meet with Chorgan so that they could have their diplomatic negotiation. Hang on a second. Does this mean that the Acamarian ruling council has basically decided that they don't want starships and don't care about having a space fleet? What? Again, that's just something bizarre. It's see, it's one of those things where it's like the Acamarian ruling council tried to claim that they had forged a lasting peace, and that the gatherers were threatening that lasting peace. And wait, no, no, no. Actually, that doesn't really seem to be the case because the fact that the lasting peace isn't really peaceful because you have old blood feuds that are, well, they're not being actively acted out. They're being thought about a lot. And that's kind of a problem because again, so like what I mentioned with the whole thing with Utah is that she's a mass murderer. She's going around infecting members of the Lornak clan with that virus because she knows it'll kill them. Why? Because she wants revenge for the fact that the Trelestic clan got wiped out in one of those blood feuds. Again, this was one of my personal favorite episodes of TNG, just for the depth that they went into in the Acamarians. But the way they ended the episode kind of took the interesting stuff and went like, okay, well, we don't need that anymore. Bling. Because quite frankly, the whole thing with Chorgan and the Gatherers would work best if the Acamarians actually recognized them as a useful part of society in their current state. Because, seriously, having everyone go to the homeworld and just sit on the homeworld, really? That's your plan? Does not make sense. Alrighty then. Well, that's another thing about the whole thing is that um, there's also the angle of wondering just how much Marouk knew about it. Because let's face it, Nancy Parsons did a great job of playing a character who was aloof and mysterious and a leader with serene confidence. But as I mentioned before, Marouk's motives don't necessarily make sense. So, um, the idea that Marouk actually in some way knew about what YouTube was doing, or at the very least suspected it, and just, feigned ignorance, uh, possible. Because again, it's like the blood feuds aren't the new thing. The microvirus was apparently a piece of technology that was not previously known to exist. But that raises the question of whether it's just that Dr. Crusher had never seen one before, or whether, well, also, like, it's entirely possible that Marouk didn't have solid information and more, vague ideas of what was going on and just didn't really want to worry about it. Because, okay, one of those things that people who are in a political position where they need to avoid upsetting the apple cart is that they don't want to um, aggressively look into matters without good reason, and thus will sometimes overlook, minor inconveniences like uh, a person that she didn't like happened to die, and she didn't really know why. At any rate, though, yeah, again, Nancy Parsons, great job playing Marouk. Played a character that is ethically questionable, and whether that was intentionally so or not, as a person writing something in a TTRPG, you don't really need to care about the author's original intent. You are caring about your personal interpretation of it, and quite frankly, in this case, we don't know the original intent. Trying to guess about the original intent and coming to conclusions, probably something benign, is naive. Because this is one of those situations where the Game of Thrones style political shenanigans does apply. Usually it doesn't involve killing people, but well, that was a main plot point. Yuta wanted to kill Chorgan. And if Yuta had killed Chorgan, the gatherers probably would have had a crisis of leadership. Would they have gone along with Marouk's plan or not? Good question. Hard to say. Actually, you know what? Doing an alternate history take on this, where Yuta did succeed in killing Chorgan, uh, would be interesting because it's Marouk's personal assistant killing Chorgan. How would that look to the rest of the gatherers if they found out that the reason why Chorgan and certain other members of the gatherers died, because Chorgan was in the episode presented as being the last of the Lornak clan, and that the Lornak clan, the part was one of the ones that had left the homeworld and become part of the gatherers. Not that the Lornaks were actually all that numerous, because again, that whole fight to the death thing. Almost all the Trelestas died. The majority of the Lornaks died too. Anyways, well, that's enough for now. This is one of those things where it's like looking at the nuances and details of politics and the world in the game is really, really fun. And something that can be interpreted multiple different ways. At any rate, have fun with pondering that. See you guys later.